Hello, it is I, my Linster Kentledor. Did you miss me? I'm sorry I haven't been around in a while, but I'm here now and ready to talk Dungeons and Dragons. So, for today's episode, we're going to talk about
Oops. It looks like somebody must have accidentally cast a silence spell. I wonder who could have done that. Looks like it's sign language for you, wizard. Well, minions, I shall do the unthinkable today. I shall speak about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons in a positive light, giving you tips to give it an old school twist. A sprinkle of grit and a dash of challenge. A little bit of the best of both worlds, Are you a 5th edition player who's curious about the OSR, but have already invested heavily into 5e? As much as I love old school games, I understand your plight. So before you go rushing off and buying a whole new game, discarding your well-worn 5th edition books, why not try running 5e in an old school way? Yes, minions, with just a little tinkering, you can take your 5e game and give it a delicious new flavor for a whole new experience, while still remaining within the familiar 5e framework. What follows are 5 simple rule adjustments that can make characters a touch more vulnerable and give your games a more slow burn feel. These are by no means comprehensive, but a decent jumping off point to make your 5e games that much more exciting while dipping your toe into the feel of old school.
Warning, don't just dump this on your unexpecting players, especially if they're power player types. They will not like you for it.
Are you ready, minions? Let's begin. Number 1. Roll 3d6 for stats, like in the old days. Yes, minions, roll a meager 3d6 for each attribute. Bonus points if you make them do it in order. And don't bow to player whinging about lower power levels and useless PCs. There's no such thing. Players often assume that their character must be the absolute best at what they do or the game won't be fun. This is a fallacy, and more often than not, the opposite proves true. Seemingly average, mundane characters are often more relatable and satisfying to see grow from humble roots. 5th edition already has a high-octane feel, with every character gaining +2 proficiency on top of attributes, for which there are many opportunities to increase. From generous racial adjustments to feats to attribute increases every few levels, an average result of 9 to 12 will not hurt the characters. Rather, it will enhance the experience. If you allow feats, the choice between increasing an attribute or taking a feat will be more meaningful. Occasional exceptional characters will turn up, and that's fine, but they'll be more rare and special. Number 2. Pop the hit point bloat. Hit points in 5th edition have bloated to an extreme level, so I offer these fixes. First, no hit point adjustments for Constitution after level 1. Further, after first level, there's no taking the average for hit points. No, minions. You roll your hit points straight, and you take what you get. Full hit points at level 1 plus Constitution bonus as per the player's handbook. But after that, you're at the mercy of the dice. It will average out over time, but each new level is a gamble with which you must make do. Abilities and feats that offer levels per hit point still remain, only the con modifier is removed after level 1. It is important, however, that this rule also apply to all monsters. They will, on average, be reduced by about half their hit points as well, give or take. I have found that it deflates the bloat quite nicely, and most combats last only a handful of rounds, thus eating up less time in any given session. Further, do not adjust the damage of weapons and spells. They remain as is. This will make combats fast and deadly, very much like in old school games. Players will be forced to be careful and pick their battles. Oh yes, minions. Number 3. Limit cantrips. Cantrips as written are core to the fabric of 5th edition, so removing them is pulling one thread too many from the tapestry. But if you limit the number of daily castings to character level plus proficiency bonus, suddenly casters must manage their resources much more carefully. This is still far more generous than classic old school, where first level mages got but a single spell, but it works well within the 5th edition framework. Besides, I love seeing the look on a wizard's face when you mess with their power. They're so precious, aren't they? Ooh, which reminds me, let's look in on our pet wizard. Oh my, he looks really angry this time, doesn't he? Number 4. A character can multiclass or take feats, but not both. If you are allowing feats in multiclass characters, which isn't a bad idea since we're limiting other options, restrict players to choosing one or the other. So if a player takes a feat, they are now barred from multiclassing. Likewise, if they multiclass, they are barred from taking any feats. This serves to limit some absurd multiclass and feat combinations, and make players consider their character choices a little further as options are now reduced. Moreover, I also suggest raising the minimum stats for multiclassing to 14 or even 15, to make such combinations a little harder so that you can mitigate the obnoxious concept of dipping into other classes for some top-loaded abilities. Dipping is for Chip's minions, not role-playing. 5. Use the Gritty Realism Rest variant. And finally, minions, the 5th edition DMG is quite a delicious book, with good tips and interesting ideas to spice up your campaign. One of them, perfectly geared to a more challenging old-school style, is the Gritty Realism variant for rests. Page 267 of the 5th edition DMG minions. To sum up, your short rest mechanic, which is normally 1 hour, now becomes the standard 8-hour overnight rest time. The long rest, normally the 8-hour overnight, now takes a full 7 days to gain the benefits. You otherwise leave the rest benefits and rules by the book. In doing so, players out in the field for long stretches of time will have to carefully manage resources, which means not going Nova at every combat encounter, as well as avoiding conflicts where possible, and keeping close to a safe haven where staying put for a week is a potential option. It also makes time-sensitive missions that much more challenging. The Dungeon Master must also take these alterations to the rules into consideration and adjust their encounters accordingly. In old-school play, encounters weren't always catered to character ability. So too must be the case here, but players must have an out. Don't railroad your story in such a way that players must overcome specific encounters at appointed intervals. Rather, open yourself to player agency and the direction they want to take the story. They will have to plan and play smart, but you must let their choices, for good or ill, determine events. That is largely a whole other topic, but keep it in mind, minions. It will take time and adjustment of playstyle, but believe me, minions, it's worth the effort as game satisfaction can pay off in dividends. Provisionally, of course, depending on the maturity of your players. There are inevitably players who simply cannot part with the power fantasy that core 5th edition provides, and that's fine. No style of play is invalid. But for players interested in something different, something challenging, give it a go and see what happens. But don't just throw these changes at your players. After all, prepared minions are successful minions. The benefits of restrictions in play cannot be overstated, and learning to play the hand you've been dealt and roll with the punches, rather than always being optimized to the extreme, in my opinion, leads to a far more fulfilling experience in the long run. So I shall leave you with that to ponder, minions. Give it a try, and see if it's a fit for you. Soon enough, for those still no longer satisfied with 5th edition, I shall talk about converting to an actual OSR game. But that's a topic for another day. Ta for now, minions.